You know, when I think of archives, I think of the National Archives in Washington, D.C. It's a fabulous place to visit and carries the total history of our country. Everything from presidential documents that can be stolen by presidential advisors all the way to the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence all in one room. But one of the most important things to remember is that the real heritage of the country is in small archives and small communities, because the cohesiveness of small communities is what brings us all together as a country. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Absolutely.
All right. This is my friend Rod Sobers, and he is an archivist here in the Baxter County. Well, I guess you would call it the Baxter County Archives, wouldn't you?
Very good, Norm.
And it's just good. Well, thanks for coming aboard today. I'm glad to be talking with you today. We're going to be touring the museum a little bit later, which is full of artifacts and fun stories. But really, this room has a special story in itself, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. We're on the ground floor, Norm, of developing a Baxter County Archives. We've been at it now for about 6 months now, so we are truly on the ground floor. I recently moved into this area the latter part of last year after 31 years with the National Archives and Records Administration, mainly in the Presidential Library System. And I've always had a strong empathy for local history and regional history. Not in addition, of course, national history is where we have at the National Archives. And one of my interests was the development of an archival program in this area after I found out that they had archival material but did not have any people to actually develop an archives along professional lines and to encourage additional people to donate material to the archives. We started off with material that had been donated to the Historical Society.
Okay, let me stop you a second. What constitutes being an archival document or piece?
Well, when we refer to an archives, we're referring to mainly records. Now, records can come in a variety of forms. They can be photographs, they can be correspondence, they can be minutes of various meetings, they can be maps, cartographic records, audiovisual materials, videotape, motion picture film, etc. So it covers the full gamut. The key thing is it tends to be original source material pertaining to a given area. And our focus for this area is Baxter County. So we're interested in acquiring, properly preserving, and making available to the public original archival materials relating to the history of Baxter County.
What are some of the examples of some of the pieces that you've collected so far?
Probably the bulk of our holdings currently are school records. Records of the old original one-room schoolhouses in Baxter County, of which at one time there were about 68.
Wow.
Currently it is down to 3 primary school districts with portions of the county in adjacent county school districts. In addition to that, we also have Justice of the Peace records from some of the old Justice of the Peace.
So we're talking marriage license, death certificates, things of that sort?
Not yet. That material is still within the records in the custody of the county courthouse.
Okay.
But the old Justice of the Peace from Mountain Home Township back in the days when they had judicial functions, we have some of their records. Mm-hmm. Currently it's the Quorum Court, which of course are JPs, no longer have judicial functions. But we have some of the records from the 1930s and 40s that reflects the old judicial functions of the old Justice of the Peace.
Which would be what? Let's get a little more detail. I want to find out what those kind of records are.
We could show you some examples from a ledger at some point when it's convenient. But they basically consist of small misdemeanor cases, traffic cases, issuance of warrants, things of that nature.
So you'll see family names and street names that are probably not there anymore. What's the most unusual piece you've run across so far?
Oh, that's difficult to say. Probably within the teacher contract records. We have, in addition to the records of the old original one-room schoolhouses, we also have other records that were in the custody of the old county supervisor of schools, an office which is no longer in operation. And one series or component of those records are the teacher contracts and teacher certificates. And within that we have some correspondence to the county supervisor concerning some of the contracts or people who are applying to be teachers in the county. And some of that can be rather colorful at times.
So the provisions in their contract, everything from where to live, or you get 2 chickens a month?
usually doesn't go into that detail, but it is interesting nonetheless.
So here's one of those classic examples of some of the archival pieces that are here. This is from 1956. Now, what is this, Ron?
This is one of the early poll tax records from 1956, which reflects an activity that many southern states, including Arkansas, had of people when they went to vote, go to the polls, they had to pay a poll tax. And these are receipts of all the poll taxes paid for the 1956 election.
And of course, that was outlawed by the Supreme Court in 1964.
Right, and was actually was part of a constitutional amendment to the U.S. Constitution, banning poll taxes, which went into effect in '64.
And the whole point behind it was to keep minorities from voting.
That historically was the case, yes. But I think it is important for a true county archives, such as the Baxter County Archives, to have all of these records that relates to the early and the fairly recent history of the county.
And now we have touch screen voting booths. Kind of ages us a little bit there, Rod. You know,
Yes,
we're thinking
it does.
1956. Now, how far back do these records go?
We only have a segment which covers the early to mid-50s, from about 51 to 56.
I see here a special ticket from the Paradise Theater. I don't even know where the Paradise Theater is. Tell me about that.
The Paradise Theater was located in Cotter, and we're fortunate to have some of the records and artifacts from the old Paradise Theater for the period 1937 to about 1941.
Yeah, some beautiful pieces here. I mean, that's probably some kind of special pass that was done. But looking at this notice of availability, the form underneath it, these are the films that would have been available and what dates they would have been available to be playing in Cotter.
Yes, they would, Norm. This here being the date being May of 1939, with some of the films that were available during that time period.
Wow, look at those. Some Like It Hot. In August the 19th of 1939 would have been available here. Just saw that on Turner Classics not long ago. The King of Chinatown, Cafe Society, and the list goes on and on. You have a stack of these, so you have all the records of all the old movies that have played here at one time or the other.
Yes, we do. It's one of our more interesting collections.
So we're hoping that what's going to happen, people will see this about the Paradise Theater, and it'll ring a bell, and you'll go back and look through your old pictures and things, and you may have some wonderful photographs of that old theater.
That is quite possible. And if people do have photographs of the Paradise Theater circa 1930s and 40s, we'd certainly appreciate a copy, because we currently do not have one.
These are all confirmations of bookings. Of course, those are done online now, but this was in, what year is that? I'm looking at
1939.
1939 for a movie called Sweethearts, that it was available, and they had a trailer, and that's just how the paperwork was done between Hollywood, California, and Cotter, Arkansas. And the tickets were an outrageous 15 cents a piece, if you'll notice that. And that didn't include your popcorn or soda or anything. So you may be able to go on a date and get something to eat at the snack bar and probably do it for under $1.
Probably could. Yes, indeed.
If she didn't eat too much. All right, we're going to take a look at a few of those in just a few minutes. But now, right now, where are we in the process of getting the archives up and really developing more?
As I indicated earlier, we've been at this for about 6 months, and our primary focus right now, and will be probably through the balance of the winter, is processing the records and the papers and material that we currently have. Getting a good intellectual hold on that material, preparation of finding aids, so we have, and properly preserving it, transferring the material into acid lignin-free file folders and boxes, etc. All part of processing. And preparing the inventory so that the public will have a better idea of what we have and what may be of potential interest to them.
Okay, now how are these materials how would they be used? once everything is cataloged in?
They can be used for a variety of uses. The primary use currently and likely to be for the foreseeable future is genealogical research. Oh. For instance, the older school records do have a fair amount of use in the county of people who may have had relatives who went to school in some of the old original one-room schoolhouses, or may have attended these schools themselves and would like some more information concerning these schools, usually in preparation for reunions that these schools have, or just for their own family history.
So literally, if I were to think, well, my great-grandfather went to school here, I don't know where, but I know that he was in school here somewhere, that would be a point of starting.
Correct.
And we'll be able to look his name up and follow through and maybe find his old report card or...
That's quite possible.
School.
Yes,
wow.
Indeed.
So here's a real plethora of information that you can draw from here that's going to tell about the true lifestyle of what it was like back in the... How far back does it go, by the way? What is the date?
The earliest school records we have are from the actual old original one-room schoolhouses back to 1922. And we have some records regarding education in the county back to 1890.
1890. Wow, this was way back in the 20th century and in the 19th century. Anybody remember those times? It sounds funny to say back in the 20th century.
Right.
So as things progress and people bring new items in that can be used here, what is the plans for the future?
The plans for the future is once we get we complete the processing, the material we currently have, and get good control on that material, which is about 130, 140 linear feet, is to educate the community that we exist, that we're here to preserve original
Which is what we're doing today.
Exactly. And we hope to continue to do that for the foreseeable future, so that when people come across older records, older materials, whether it be photographs, correspondence, what have you, records of organizations, businesses, etc., that relate to the history of the county, and not just the early history, but also a fairly recent history, to think of the Baxter County Archives as a possible location to donate that material, so that it will be properly preserved.
Now, can copies be, if a person wanted to hold on to the original, are copies acceptable for the archives?
Yes, absolutely. Our preference would be, since we're set up to preserve original materials, would be the originals, but we understand that some people would probably prefer to hold on to the originals, and that's fine too. The key thing is the acquisition of the information, so we'd be happy with copies.
Now, we've got everything in place, we're ready to receive material. What do we want to tell the public on how they can either access the material or donate or bring stuff over for you?
If they have any material which they think might possibly be of interest to us in preserving it, that relates to Baxter County, in terms of preserving it for the future, to please call the Baxter County Heritage Museum, and or they can even, if they wish, email or call me at home, and I'll be happy to discuss and take a look at the material, and then we can go from there.
And we'll put those numbers on the screen for you. Well, it looks like we're on our way to having a good county archive here that's going to help preserve this part of Arkansas history. But it also, I mean, it's not just Arkansas history, is it? Because people who move from other places, we have a link to other communities and other cultures and other parts of America, or even from other parts of the world. And all of these pieces of paper kind of tie us all together. So we would encourage, if you have anything from a bill of sale to an old report card to a deed or anything of that sort, that's the kind of stuff we're looking for, isn't it?
Yes, indeed.
All right. Well, thanks. I appreciate getting to know about it. By the way, you can get in touch with the Baxter County Heritage Museum. Again, we're going to put the numbers on the screen here, and you can give them a call if you have something you'd like to look at, or if you have some things you'd like to look up. Talk to Rod. He's the man that knows everything. We'll be right back after a quick break. Thanks for being with us today. All right. As we told you earlier, the Baxter County Heritage Museum is in Gassville, but it's in a very unique place here because the building that we're in has a lot of significance to the history of the county, doesn't it, ladies?
Yes, it does.
This is Jane Messick and Catherine Abel, and they're going to give us a little tour of the whole museum today. And today, this room is called the hospital room.
Well, that's what it originally started being called.
This has to be right up here.
Okay, this is what it was originally called, and then we got so much. It's basically an overflow room.
Oh, that's what it is now.
Yeah, it's an overflow room.
Do you remember when this building was a hospital?
1923 was when it was opened. It was a hospital until 1954.
Wow. So there's a lot of people around the community who were born in this building.
Yes, sir, there are. And we do have a list of some of them.
That's what I was going to say. We've got a book that lists all the births here.
That we're aware of.
Right. And some have the parents' names and some don't. But people get a real kick out of seeing their name in the book. Then we'll have people that come in and say, I had my appendix out in this building, or Dr. Rollins treated me for pneumonia, or, we get a lot of people coming through that were actually patients in this building. And that's fun.
When you mentioned Dr. Rollins, pull that a little bit closer for me. When you mentioned Dr. Rollins, tell me about that person and
I'm going to turn that over to Jane because she's the expert on the doctor.
Dr. Rollins was born and raised in Shawnee, Oklahoma. He was one of 5 children, and all 5 children became doctors. And he met his wife in St. Louis when he was going to... He originally started to be a dentist, and then he changed course and decided to become a doctor and moved to Gassville. And no one seems to know why he chose Gassville. But he had a small office across the street over beyond there, in a little shacky building. And then he built this building and rented out part of it. Part of it was a mercantile store and a theater at one time. And as those businesses closed, Dr. Rollins just kept expanding. And in 1939, he built our last section, which, 1937, I'm sorry, and that hasn't been completely renovated yet.
But the building it's on the National Registry as well,
Yes,
so it's
it
always
is.
going to be preserved.
Yes.
All right?
Yes.
When did that happen?
We got the notice last month.
Oh.
We've been trying for 7 years to get it on the National Register, and finally made it.
So that's just going to guarantee there's not going to be a developer or someone come through and buy the property and tear it down, which would be a real shame, wouldn't it?
Well, in some ways, I think it'd be good to be rid of it because it's got so many problems. But then I hate to see our landmarks disappear too. So it's an effort on our part to keep it going and keep it standing, because it is an old building, and the construction that was done on the old building is of much better quality than the reconstruction that's been done over the years on it. And the reconstruction is what we're having problems with.
But there's always a need for maintenance, though. So this is where donations come in. If you decide that you want to give a donation back to the county in a special way that's going to last forever, a donation to the museum is a good place to put it, right?
Yes, it is. It really is.
It certainly is.
So it goes to renovation, maintaining the building,
Yes.
and also taking care of the artifacts.
Yes, it does.
Okay.
None of us are salaried. None of us take a dime.
How many volunteers are there?
Oh, 6 or 8 who really are very
Active
volunteers.
But the Historical Society, now, are you part of the Baxter County Historical Society?
Yes, we are. And we have about 250 members, but most of them live out of state. We're an organization that has members in every state in the Union. So we know we have people who have ancestors in Baxter County who live everywhere.
Well, I don't want to get too far away from our tour, but while we're talking about that, I want to make sure that people know that if they'd like to join as a member of the Baxter County Historic Society, how do they do that?
They just come in and say, I want to join, or send us a letter, or send us a check. For a single membership is $25. A family membership is $35 here. And for that, they get 4 quarterlies, newsletters from the Historical Society with family information, old history, various things in it, just whatever articles we can find to put together.
And with the archives coming along, that's really going to be an important thing, because you'll be putting special information about the archives in there as well, right?
Rod does a column every quarter.
Well, we got to look at some of the stuff here. This is the fun stuff. Now, of course, what we see around us is a lot of old hospital equipment that's all part of the original hospital.
Yes.
Was this all part of it? I need you to hold that up for me.
This first table here it's the second table. The one back in the corner was the very first examining table that was in this hospital from 1923. And it's just a slab. It's about the only thing that you could call it with some horsehair cushions on it. And then in 1944, when the hospital at the Norfolk Dam closed, Dr. Rollins and Dr. Gunther bought this second examining table and used it. And then
What's that
that's for the head.
Oh,
Oh, the headrest.
It's a headrest.
They were a little more technical
Yes.
by the 40s.
And that would raise and lower, as you can see. And then this is Dr. Gunther's last examining table. His wife gave it to us right after just before we opened the museum in July of 2000. We went down to her house and cleaned out a storage shed that had this examining table, the cabinets, and all of these cabinets in it that she had taken out of his office and had been left just the way he took them out of his office. In fact, if you'll open that cabinet right there,
I don't think we'll be able to see that on camera, but I'll come around to see it in a second.
that is filled just the way Dr. Gunther left it.
Oh, my.
I took pictures of it, took it out, we brought it up here in boxes, put it right back in when the pictures were done, just exactly the way it was. So we left it.
Now, here's a unique piece, too.
That came from the Baxter County Health Department.
It's an infantometer. Oh, that's for big kids.
Yeah.
So this is for measuring babies. You could tell how long they were. And then there's a thing here, there's a little scale here that's kind of interesting. That in years, if their birth, if they were only a month old, they should be about 8 pounds. If they were a year old, they should be about 21 pounds. And it goes right on down through age 3 on this infantometer. Kind of interesting piece. You got to come over and see this stuff. This is fun.
it's not really high tech, but I'm sure it did the job.
Hey, it does what you want to do, right? You measure a kid, and there it is.
And then
This is stuff now you have to memorize so you sound smart. But that's pretty neat.
And this is one of the original cribs from the hospital. And as you can see, it was wired together at the end. I guess because of its size, it was well used.
You mean it's wired together as a repair?
Yes.
Ah.
Boy, that's got to be safe for a new baby. Of course, a new baby can't reach it anyway, so it's all right. There have been a lot of babies go through that little crib, hasn't there?
They really have. This room actually there were 2 rooms in this room. Well, it was more than 2 rooms. But the 2 rooms in this section over here, one was a blue room and one was a pink room. And if you had a boy, you stayed in the blue room, and if you had a girl, you stayed in the pink room.
That's how they could tell the difference between boys and girls?
No, it was just something that Dr. Rollins and Dr. Gunther did with their patients. To make them feel at home, to make them feel comfortable. Because this was basically a home away from home for people who were having babies.
And in those days, too, like today, if you have a child today, you go home tomorrow.
Yes.
In those days, you stayed in the hospital for a week.
3
didn't you?
days.
Yeah.
But I remember when my aunt had one of my cousins. In fact, I kind of felt I was 8 years old. And I thought they had her just for me. I just knew that was going to be my baby. And she stayed in the pink room, which was this room right here in the corner. And the reason I remember that is because I remember looking out the windows. Not so much at the baby, but looking out the windows of the hospital when we came to visit.
Now grandchildren have taken that special place.
Yes, they have.
They sure have. We're going to look around some more.
What we have here is a moonshine still. This is contrary to our usual policy of accepting donations only from Baxter County. I have to be upfront and tell you that this still originated, as far as we know, in Wisconsin. But it is so typical of the stills that were used down here in the hills that we were very happy to get it. The fellow who donated it just a few weeks ago, his name is forgotten. Garth Sheely. He lives at Promised Land, and he had this still in his garage for maybe 20 years, and he decided that he would bring it down to the museum. We were glad to get it. He even included, and we have it sort of summarized here, a little recipe for making moonshine. Although, of course, he assured me that he himself had never made moonshine, had never seen it made. He had just heard about it. So anyway, we think this is kind of a fun addition to the museum, and people seem to enjoy looking at it.
I think there still may be one or two working stills somewhere in Baxter County, too.
Oh, we wouldn't know about that.
Wouldn't know anything about that.
Before we put this on display, Jane called our county sheriff, John Montgomery, and said, "John, is it okay if we display a still at the museum?" And he laughed and said, "Yeah, as long as you don't try to make any shine in it, it'll be fine."
Susan Rollins Johnson and the Rollins family donated a china cabinet to us, and we have slowly but surely collected all of Dr. Rollins' old medical books so that they're back in the cabinet that Dr. Rollins kept them in here in the hospital. And we have a lot of Dr. Gunther's instruments, surgical and medical instruments in the case as well. We have an interesting supply of enamelware of various uses on the sides. Some of them are from the 40s, some of them are earlier. And then we have some plastic examples that were in Dr. Gunther's stuff that are of much later origin. The rope bed was made in the county by Mr. Pugh from a walnut tree that he cut on his own property. He sawed all the boards, did all the lathe work, did all the whittling on the pegs that hold the ropes together. A friend of the museum and her family had the corn chuck mattress made in Seymour, Missouri by the Amish farmers who still save their corn husks, and just to put on this bed. And then we've been donated two feather ticks. One is down, one is regular chicken feathers. And then the quilts are from the county that we cover the bed with. And we have examples of various kinds of needlework that have been done here in the county on top of the bed. And we have another bed exactly like this in the Casey House at the fairgrounds, which, according to the Arkansas historian Joanne Gould, were made by the same craftsman. So Mr. Pugh made both beds.
That was in 1858.
I just learned, I haven't been doing this very long, and of course I don't know nearly as much as Jane does, so she has just told me that I need to mention the Norfolk Food Bank and Thrift Shop in the lovely city of Norfolk, who are always looking out for military-related items to donate to the museum, including uniforms, including this field desk, which was used in World War II. They could just fold it all up into one cabinet and move it to the next camp. So we're very grateful to not only to the Norfolk people, but we have veterans from all wars that have come and shared their mementos with us, and we're very proud of our military room. We have artifacts from the War of 1812, which is our earliest, almost 200 years old, through Desert Storm in the early 1990s. And we get an awful lot of men who were veterans or who just admire the military coming through here. Little boys are fascinated by this room. And can we show anything more in it, Norm?
Absolutely. Yeah, tell me about the walls, the pictures on the wall.
These pictures were, as you can see, perhaps, each individual photograph gives the veteran's name. This is William Lane, and shows that he served in the Air Force in Korea. Gives his date of birth, 1930, and his date of death, which was 1998. These pictures on the wall were a high school project, where the kids in the class went out and gathered photos from their friends, neighbors, and people that they met around the county, and put this collection together. And after they had finished displaying it at the school, they generously donated it to us. So we're proud to have it. I had a woman come in here just the other day, a couple of days ago. She was thrilled to find her uncle's picture on the wall here. That happens frequently, that sort of thing.
And you have uniforms in this room also from all branches and
We do.
from all time periods.
Including female members of the armed forces, which we're very proud to have represented. Our earliest artifact, in fact, is a tunic, you might call it a coat from the War of 1812, and it looks as if you could put it on and wear it, and it would be fine. There's also a sword from 1812 that we're displaying with it.
This book is one of the artifact books that's close by. I see, and you said this lady that we're looking at right now, her name is?
Beatrice Brattinger. She was a nurse in World War I and served in France. We have a book of her. The most interesting thing I find in the book are collections of her letters. She was a very prolific letter writer. She kept in touch with her family and friends, who fortunately saved many of her hundreds of handwritten letters.
Let's take a look at some of those. Let's just turn some pages here.
Here's one written on stationery from the YMCA and in Des Moines, Iowa. It's dated August 29th, 1918, and it starts out, "Dear Folks." She wrote letters from, here's one in New York, where she was stationed for a while in 1918 on her way to the front in France, waiting for a ship to take her to France. She was a very articulate, very observing young woman. I wish I could have known her just reading some of the things she has written.
Well, you almost do after reading her story, right?
You feel like you do. You feel like she might have been a cousin, an aunt, or a good friend. We have a collection of photographs that Beatrice was able to collect. We don't know if she took them herself or if other people did. Things she saw interesting. Here's one from Nice, which is a town in France, as you know, of the public latrine, which interested her. She evidently thought that was quite civilized, and all kinds of just things that caught her eye. People, places, friends. This is a fascinating book. It's in the military room. If you come in, you're welcome to sit and read it and ponder over it as long as you like.
Nazi collection started 2 years ago. We were given this banner that's above the case in a little cardboard box that was mailed back from Germany, and the box had never been opened until we took it out and unfolded it here at the museum. Some of the parts, the Nazi emblem on the case was made and given to us. Most of the artifacts inside the case are on loan from Gene Waters over by Valley Springs. He collects Nazi artifacts and Indian artifacts. After Gene Waters gave us loaned us what he did, we have had various people in the community come in and donate other things to us. We have a spoon from Rommel's mess kit, and we have a helmet that was given to us that is actually in better shape than the one that Gene Waters loaned us. We have some guns that have been loaned to us as well for our Nazi exhibit, and because we had the Jim Fisk collection of the Pacific War, we felt it was important to balance it out so people remembered there was a European war as well. So our rifle in the bottom shelf of the case is an original, and so is the cannon bucket that's on loan to us from a member of this Historical Society, and he asked me to remain anonymous, so I will do that. We have a musician's sword on the second shelf, and also on the second shelf we have I believe it's an Enfield rifle from the Union Army, along with a blood bayonet and a very well preserved a cartridge case from the Union Army. They're from the Ohio Volunteers. We have 3 belt buckles from the Ohio Volunteers in the bottom case, and we have various bullets from various locations on the top shelf, along with some other small artifacts that have been donated or loaned to us.
This, believe it or not, is a post office. It stood in a general store in the little community in northern Baxter County called Three Brothers from approximately 1900 to about 1953 or so. The postmistress, Mrs. Turnbow, who ran the general store, also would step behind this post office where she had sorted out the mail according to the box number. If you were number 12, your mail would go in that little slot there. And she'd hand you your mail, sell you stamps, take packages, and so forth. This was donated to us by Mrs. Turnbow's grandson, Jim, who still owns the building, although it hasn't been operated as a general store for many years. But he thought we might be interested in it, and we sure enough were. We have certainly enjoyed having it. It's been in the museum now for about 3 or 4 months, and everybody is fascinated. So that's our poster. We're looking at the collection of the Mountain Home photographs. We have many more photographs of Mountain Home, but these are the ones that hang on the wall in our big, what we call our big room or our meeting room. We have people come through here and say, oh, I remember when that store was there, or my granddad used to go to this barber shop, or whatever. We have collections of photos from not only Mountain Home, but from Gassville, Cotter, Norfolk, and some communities, such as Buford, that hardly exist anymore. So come on down and take a look, and you'll probably find something about your hometown that you didn't know before. I moved to Baxter County just over 3 years ago, and one of the astonishing things I learned when I got here was that Baxter County used to grow cotton. I always thought cotton was just a far south kind of thing, but no way. It used to grow right here in Baxter County. In fact, I'm told that where the post office is in Mountain Home was once a big cotton field. And our friend Jane, when she was a little girl, was so anxious to pick cotton that her daddy let her go over there and try. But she soon learned that it would prick your fingers, and she quit after half an hour or so. Lots of kids, though, would be let out of school. They would pick cotton. They would drag 50-pound sacks if they were little kids, and bigger sacks if they were bigger kids, and earn a few cents to help their families. People in Baxter County were poor in the teens and 20s, and of course in the 30s when the rest of the country was poor as well. So anyway, here's some cotton. Before it's sent to the gin, we used to have a cotton gin just off the square in Mountain Home, and a couple of others in the area, and I find it fascinating.
You know, we've heard the adage many times that history repeats itself if we forget it. And it's hard to do that when you have wonderful artifact collections. But really, artifacts is not what our history is. Artifacts are only evidence of our history. They're things that happen and things you can put your hands on that have a past and a history for sure and a story. But the real nature of history is not in an artifact or a piece of paper in the archives or any of that. The real nature of history is the character that's passed on from the people who fought in the wars, worked in the antiquated hospitals, saved the old paperwork and went to one-room schoolhouses. There was a spirit and character about them that was passed on to us. And when we walk into a room like this, we're reminded of where they came from. That's all there is. The important thing is, without you looking inward, you'll never be able to look backward or to see forward. It's important. That's what history is. It's culture, it's faith, it's politics, it's feelings, it's loyalty, it's a sense of unity. And that's exactly what our history should be. Today, I feel a sense of unity with the community that I live in and visit in. And I hope you'll do the same when you come to the Baxter County Heritage Museum. In the meantime, I'll see you again very soon on another Out of the Norm show, where the stories really are all about you.